This is the Medicine Girl Podcast with renowned healing expert and registered nurse Robin Stebbins. Every week, we shine the light on new ways to heal your body from the root, ignite your inner healer, and tap into your divine wisdom. Begin to live harmoniously with your mind, body, and spirit. You are stronger than you think, braver than you realize. Now is the time to wake up and start living healthier, wealthier, and laugh out loud happier. And here we go.
Hello, and welcome to the Medicine Girl Podcast. It is me, your host, Robin Stebbins, and today I am here with Jeff Howard. And Jeff, I'm just going to hand it over to you. Introduce yourself and all of your amazing accolades, and then we'll just kind of jump right in.
Thanks, Robin. I don't think I have too many accolades, but I will introduce myself. I'm a psychotherapist in private practice for going on a decade, and I'm a men's group leader and an educator. That's the very short version. Also a podcaster, and still working on my next podcast. So, yeah.
Perfect. And I like that you're a psychotherapist, because I do always like to, when I work with patients as a nurse or when I'm doing health coaching, I always like to marry it with science instead of just, why don't you try this modality because, it's great. It's more,
Sure.
Especially with, things like PTSD, which I know a lot of people that suffer from PTSD and addiction. And I kind of, after our first conversation, really want to center our podcast today on addiction. So I think the first question, and especially with people I work with, they don't know what addiction is. So can you kind of give us a basic understanding of what addiction is?
Yeah. A very basic understanding, at least my understanding of addiction, is that it's any behavior that impacts our life in such a way that we can't stop it, and impacts essentially a negative impact on our life. Obviously, the big ones are substances, drugs and alcohol. But like you and I talked about in our short conversation, technology, I think, is a rising star in the field of addiction, so to speak, that I think is a rival, a pernicious and I think slippery rival of more obvious things like sex, food, drugs, alcohol. So bottom line, anything in our lives that lead to behaviors that really interrupt with our well functioning, and we have a difficult time stopping them.
That, and like you just said, that can refer to so many different things, like food. And I know those that I work with that have, say, metabolic syndrome, you have a food addiction. Whether you want to admit it or not, it's disrupting your life, and it's leading to an unhealthy body system, so that you won't live as long. And I understand, there's not body shaming. I'm just talking medically. Your body's out of alignment, and I see morbidly obese patients losing their feet and their toes and due to circulation issues and that kind of thing. So that's a obvious disruptor. But then when we look at things like what kind of our first conversation was around being a victim, and sort of that understanding of this isn't disrupting my life like it would, say, an alcoholic who's getting up at 3:00 in the morning to drink, but I'm also not functioning at my full capacity. Like I'm not really throwing myself into this world at optimal functioning. So somehow it's interrupting my potential. I mean, if that's fair to say, because it's easy to, when we're saying addiction, I think for me, what I would do is I would pick the most dysfunctional people and compare myself to them. So it's like, well, I'm not on my phone 12 hours a day.
just for 5 hours a day.
Yeah, it's just 5. So this is like not even half that. So what's your take on kind of, sort of word salad right there, but just honing in on the difference between functioning at full capacity and having something disrupt your life to the point where that I'm not able to express myself fully.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. A couple of things come up. You think about functioning at full capacity, which obviously changes. It's different for everyone, and ideally, our capacity, if we're growing, continues to expand. So, in my experience, it's always a moving target. So, optimal functioning is one thing. Full capacity is kind of another. It's like potentially a goal for some folks. So I appreciate that. The thing that comes up around technology, or you mentioned being a victimhood, and functionality. Relative to so many other people in the world, I can be a highly functioning entrepreneur and still be an alcoholic. But that comparison thing. Well, no, I have a nice car. I have a nice job. I make X number of dollars per year. I am fine.
Yeah.
I have a lovely marriage, and of course, a lovely marriage through the lens of whatever's happening for you. So that's a little bit slippery. I think we can all get a little slippery there because we're comparing, like you said, to these outliers that are not that common. And being a functional alcoholic still makes me an alcoholic, even though I'm holding it together. There's another term, maintenance drunk or maintenance alcoholic, where someone needs 2 or 3 or 4 drinks every night to stave off the DTs, to sort of keep it together from a physiological standpoint. And they never really seem drunk because they never really are, and they're also never really sober. So that's an interesting example. But going back to something you said about the victim thing, I learned a few years back, and this blew my mind, that when we're kids, we don't get addicted to substances so much, or even necessarily external things. And we do, and sometimes we do, but we get addicted to states of being, body states, emotional states. So that might be the daydreamer. Like things are really hard at home. Maybe you've got a violent father. So the thing to do to get addicted to is to go outside and just imagine a different world. It's a really amazing mechanism for safety and escape. And then also it can perpetuate into adulthood. And that's part of the state that I might go into, some version of dissociation, my own little world. And really tough to spot that I might be addicted to a being state, a state of being, a state of my body, emotionally and physically. Here I want to take it sort of in a cultural direction. You spoke about, before we started recording, 10-second videos now on TikTok, just whittling away at our attention span. And what do new computers come armed with? Notifications out our ears. Yeah. Right? It's all designed for quote unquote connectivity, which is such a paradox and really a lie. That it's actually disconnection, fragmented pieces strung together to make us feel loved, to feel connected in a really superficial way.
Which isn't that the perfect solution, though, when you experience trauma and you experience separation and you experience this, growing up, your familiar is chaos. So this whole technology system, in my humble opinion, is chaos, and it is disconnect, and it is, wait, look over here, and like you're just doing something and your kid's demanding your attention and you're trying to answer an email and they're saying something, and it's just that my brain feels like it's going to have an absolute meltdown. And I look at kind of the big picture with, like you said, TikTok's now down to 10 seconds. We're creating a world of goldfish. Not even gold. I mean, I think goldfish probably have a longer attention span. But that's easy to manipulate. I mean, if I always look at it, I try to look at it from the other side. If I wanted to take over a population, I'd want them obese and docile with very short attention span. So I can create this new world based on, hey, we're just going to start saying this happened, or this event didn't happen, or this is safe, or this is how the world works. And then all of a sudden it is, just because no one can remember anything.
Yeah. Short-term attention spans, short-term memory. It's a little bit like the news cycle. I think it's a great example of the power of the news cycle. I think that's part of why so we're outraged, understandably, by this recent shootings, one that happened just literally a block away from right where I'm standing here in Colorado. And the news cycle is designed to just inundate us, hammer us with information, so that, well, we've got to make room for all this new information with its quasi-importance. It's, culturally lauded, stay an informed citizen through centrally owned media.
Mm.
It's kind of a joke in that regard.
It's just, all right. And that's a whole different topic, because
Sure.
I feel like a junkyard dog with that. Like, I just want to know the long game. And I think I do, I think they've been pretty obvious about what it is in this global reset. And, but again, I do think I think that's interesting in how that connects, though, having us with very short attention spans and 60 different ways. Like, I was looking at all the ways people are now trying to get a hold of me: Signal, Messenger, it's like, where are we even?
Boxer, Telegram. Yep.
Yeah. The Boxer now is okay. Yep. Too much. It was too much 5 years ago. And then we keep adding on it, adding on it. Yeah. And to the point where now we feel like we can't live without our phones. We can't live without technology. How do we get from point A to point B? And I have a little group I've set up that just we communicate about, okay, if the grid gets shut down, if cell phones get shut down, what do we do? So how, like I say, just have a dry run where you spend the whole day without your phone. How do you know how to get places? Actually have maps. Remember when we used to have maps and
yeah, and you used to ask people, like, I would regularly stop by gas stations to say, hey, can you tell me how to get to this place?
Yeah.
And people would generally be really friendly and say, oh, yeah, let me tell you. So You're going to go here and you're hanging left, and then you're going to see two buildings and go to the second one. It was great. It was an actual human interaction that was functional, practical, and also kind, typically.
Yes. Yeah. So you get the connection, the human connection. And so, this technology that's now routing itself in our brains, it's like, okay, I want something to show me how to get there.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're starting to lose that ability. So I try to, like, when I go, I'm a home health nurse, so I see patients all over the place. I try to do it either, if I went there last time, I try to do it on memory, or more getting back to like that maps. So getting back to kind of circling back to what we're talking about in addictions. I think this is a great segue, because all of this dependence on technology, you just turn that dial up slightly, and now it's not just dependence, it's bordering into addiction, where people are getting up in the middle of the night to buy the next iPhone or to get the next technology or whatever it is. But when we're talking about the feeling of we're not enough or worthiness, the familiar state of chaos leads to being a victim to your life, and kind of the addiction to victimhood. How do you see that playing out with all of this, kind of in this new world we're living in?
Yeah. Well, the word that comes up strongly when we were talking about just a couple of minutes ago was disempowerment. We're getting sold freedom, quote unquote, and empowerment, and it's a snake oil, in my opinion. That's not to say some of the technology doesn't have incredible value. Of course it does. We can go into space, and we can fly across the world, and I mean, it's amazing. We can pick up a thing that's not connected to a wire, and we can talk to people. It's amazing. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And it really does. And the marketing is so obvious. You'll be cool. You'll be free. You'll be bitching. You'll be sexy. You'll be the coolest kid on the block and the smartest and whatever else. So this whole idea that it's empowerment feels like we're being sold such a false bill of goods, because in my experience, it's disempowerment. When I look at, for instance, self-mastery and really trying to be present, engaged, deliberate, make intentional choices about my life moment to moment, not just in the big picture, but really, truly, do I need, where's my phone? Do I need to check my phone? Like, for God's sake, like here I am with you for an hour, and that's wonderful. I'm not thinking at all about my phone, because I love having the normal way I work. And this is not always true, but the normal way I live is that, well, my phone is somewhere. I don't know where it is. Often it's my bedroom away from me during the day. Yes. And I also totally fall in the trap of picking it up every 12 minutes or 7 minutes. So that stands out to me, this idea that we're being sold empowerment, and it's quite the opposite in reality.
I love that idea. And what came up for me just now when you're saying that is when I don't answer my phone, or I've decided to turn it off for the weekend. First I hear, gas, like how nobody does that. But also I get pushback from people saying, well, I left you a message with the expectation that I respond to that message. Even people are acquaintances, not business associates, somebody that maybe went out for coffee. Well, I'm under no obligation yet, legally or otherwise, to respond to any text. And I'm getting too much information that, I would be on my phone 24 hours a day responding to the amount of messaging that I get in a day. Yeah. So in that, it's when we're talking like empowerment, I have to be empowered in saying, I'm not going to respond to every message that I receive. I'm not going to respond to every email or otherwise that I receive. I have to be selective based on what lights my soul up, what feels empowering to me, and where am I going in my life? Kind of what we're talking about initially. Like I always look at toxins, and that is social media toxins, friends that are toxic, food that's toxic, drinks that are toxic. And I always looked at, well, if all of that was gone and I was really tapped into my power, what am I capable of then? And I think that's kind of maybe the why that we look at releasing ourselves from this addictive technology, which kind of sounds like that's the most prominent thing that we as humans right now have to deal with.
Yeah, I think it's the most insidious, like we were talking about a few minutes ago. It's not, it doesn't fit in the orthodox traditional category of addiction, because now, and I get really sad when I see this, and it's so common, where people are just on the street, at a cafe, sitting at the same table as ostensibly their friend, right? Yes. Staring at their phones. And I try really hard to make a practice of my phone is out of sight and out of touch when I'm with people that I care about, whatever the context. And if I need it to be out, I say, hey, I might get an important text or call, so my phone's going to be out. It's on vibrate. Know that this is not an indicator of my lack of interest in you. I'm very interested, because it's just all too common to have phones just sitting on the table, wherever we are. And there's research that shows it makes us, from an IQ standpoint, I think it's something like 5 or 6 points dumber. Just the potential of a message coming through the phone, because it pulls our attention to that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I do see that. I was in Truckee this last weekend, and it's a tourist town, and everyone's sitting outside. It was a beautiful day, and I would say probably 90% were on their phone, like a group of people though still, and everyone's on their phone doing different things, or couples sitting together, they're each on their phones. It's sending the message. I don't know if people understand this or not, that this is more important to the person sitting across you or around you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just
essentially what we're saying. Yeah. Yep. And it's insidious, and just because it's been normalized doesn't mean it's good for us.
Let's talk about then this addiction to the phone. How can someone, or these teenagers now that I'm interacting with more and more, they don't understand the why behind it, or they're like, no, this is normal, because all of them do it, and they all have these ways of connecting with each other virtually now. And with this whole lockdown, it's been almost perpetuated by,
I wouldn't even say almost, like it's totally been perpetuated. My God, here we are on Zoom. I mean, we don't live in the same town, and this is the way I see most of my clients now. Yeah. I don't know if they understand that one-on-one connection. I grew up with a dial rotary phone with no answering machine. So if the person couldn't get a hold of you, into space.
It just rang.
Yeah, it just rang. I remember that.
Never knew.
Yeah, like, all right, are they sitting there ignoring the phone? They take the cord out of the wall? Were they just not home? And you would just try again later.
Yeah, you just try again later. If it was long distance,
you had to stop by their house.
Yes. And you know what I read? That people in Norway and the colder, darker winters, they would just set out a place because they knew intuitively so-and-so was coming over. So they would just set out the place. We had that ability, that intuition. And I think that's what we're talking about. Our IQ might go down a few points at least, but I think the deeper loss is the loss of the connection to our intuition, the connection to our soul, the connection to our heart. Like when you and I are talking, we're functioning around 44 bits of information per second with the brain, but the heart has a bundle of neurons in the gut that functions around 11 million bits per second. That's that intuition. You just know. Or the heart can actually see into the future a few seconds. They've shown
the heart's phenomenal like that. We think our brain works quickly, but the heart is wildly stretches out beyond us. Yeah.
And that can be the why when we're telling this youth generation, why put your phone down? Why connect with your friends while they're sitting in front of you? The why is that it gets this back online, the heart. The heart can't really communicate through Zoom. And I noticed that it can't really communicate through technology. It has a resonance, they say, about 8 feet outside of the body. I think it's probably quite a bit more than that. But that's the interaction. And then you're connected to the mainframe, the planet, the universe, getting that knowledge. Whereas if you don't, it's almost like if you don't learn a language before a certain age, you're really never going to really embrace it and know it.
Right. Much tougher.
Fully. Yeah. And I think same with connecting with people. If you don't really learn that at a young age, you lose that ability. I see his friends kind of have lost that ability to communicate, to sit down and let's just talk. Let's talk for an hour. Let's just play a game, do something in person.
Yeah, there are a few things that come up for me here, and I've thought a bit about this. I have kids, a 23-year-old son, 21-year-old daughter. And one, I think about us as parents or just mentors, models, whether we have kids or not, of modeling what it is ourselves. So often with parents, I see, hey, put your phone down, and then they're staring at their phone. It's that whole do as daddy says, not as daddy does thing, which... that doesn't work. So my recommendation is often, all right, let's model. let's model what it is. Let's show our kids or the younger generation what it is to have a connection where we do very deliberately put away distractions and we focus on the person who's in front of us. And I also hold out that I can't know what it's like to be a 14-year-old or a 21-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 9-year-old in the world. So I like to hold space for, in a way, honoring the ways they're learning to connect, to be in the world. And I have seen a number of kids that can do the both and. They're totally hip with Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok, and they can have a conversation. And they can be present, and they want to help when we're making bread or we're feeding the chickens or we're out in the yard or we're on a dog walk. So I encourage the both and there, which is to get curious. And really, I had to do this with my own kids, and it's humbling. So how does it go for you? Like, what's cool about Instagram, or what's cool about Snapchat?
Yeah.
Tell me your experience, because I don't know. And what I don't want to do is judge them and come in as the heavy that tells them that's not the way to do it. I walked both directions in the snow, 12 miles.
Right.
That
Yeah.
kind of, crotchety old dude thing. Because otherwise it feels like we're invalidating. We run the risk of shaming / invalidating / galvanizing their behaviors against what we're wanting to convey.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's an easy path, and I don't think there's one right way to go. And that's what comes up for me when it comes to, I don't know what it's like, and I want to hold out hope that there's a path through, even for the kids that you and I think both have some serious concerns about, of like, how the hell are they going to connect in a deep way, in a way that isn't just 5 superficial things cobbled together, masquerading as depth.
That's it. And to show that this is what it looks like. And modeling that, I really like that, because and knowing full well you're going to have to deal with the pushback. Like, for example, taking my son, who's 14, on a hike.
Yeah.
First 20 minutes is probably going to be complaining, cry talking, I call it. and just, this is the worst moment of his life. And then all of a sudden I can see,
what a waste of time.
Yeah, it's a waste of his time, and he could be doing this and this and this. And,
right.
and then I slowly see this like kind of wash over him, this connection to nature. And he starts looking around. It's like, you're so used to that, that screen time, where you're being just fed information and amused, 10 seconds, TikTok, this amusing video, and the next one.
Sure.
It's like all of a sudden, it's like, it's just calm, it's peaceful. We can ground, we can take our shoes off. There's cows. Sometimes there's cows on the trail. It's that unknown. You'll never experience this again in this moment, and connect deeply with nature in that moment.
Yeah.
But again, it has to come from top down. We can't say, get off your phone, and while we're addicted to our phones. So can we, the question that just keeps coming up is, how do we tease out, like you said, promoting and seeing people's creations on Instagram and Snapchat and all these things? Like, there is some benefit to that.
Sure.
How do we tease out, like, when it's a problem, when it's too much, when you can see, like, not to make them wrong, but just to say, okay, I see that they have been on their phone and left to their own devices. That's all they're doing, just screen time, scrolling, not contributing. How can we separate out addiction, dependence to, okay, this is a healthy way to interact with social media?
Yeah, that's a good question. It feels like we're talking about 2 different populations, 2 different demographics. So, like with my kids, it was really, truly no phones at the table, no phones after 8, definitely no phones in your bedroom. They would just go away. And so we would always have a family meal. And we would say, what's up? How's it going? How's your day? Do the roses and thorns thing. What's a rose from the day? What's a thorn from the day? What's a bud? To talk about just stuff that happens. And again, that that kind of like you were saying with your son, like, suctioning him off of social media or the devices. That also can be a pretty awkward situation for a while until everybody gets in the groove. How was your day? Good. Anything exciting happen? No. Anything bad happen? No. Did anything happen at all? No. Oh, wow. All right, cool. Moving on. How about you, son? Same thing. So it can be, especially, I know for me, I didn't start out doing that. I had to work my way up and into it, and it was often a little bit painful and awkward. So that's one thing about setting parameters as parents. And then I think as adults, here's where, okay, can we actually walk our talk and be empowered adults? Back to the modeling piece. It's great that you take your son for a hike. Do we take ourselves for hikes? What's our self-care look like? Are we buying the story hook, line, and sinker that we need to be really productive and we need to be really sexy and our brand needs to be super on point? And do we have X number of friends and X number of likes, X number of followers? And for me, that's a consistent cost-benefit analysis based on how does it feel? Yeah. How are my relationships? Ooh, they kind of suck. I don't feel close to anyone. Maybe that's an indicator that I might be addicted to these external markers, these external validations more than I am to, tuned into caring for myself first and foremost.
Right.
And seeking out connection.
I do this little, it's called Nature is Medicine hiking group. And the first thing I ask people to do is, hey, let's hike. No talking. Oh, and I'd say almost 99% of the time, everyone cannot maintain it. And what I hear them talking about is how much they enjoyed a different hike. Or they'll talk about, oh, this hike in Marin County, it's so beautiful. It's like, yeah, but you're here. Right. You're here right now. And then, when you're on a different hike, you're going to talk about this hike. It's like, I think maybe part of what's happening with this technology is it's taking us out of the present moment. We're watching somebody else's posts that's either in the past or they're projecting the future, or the news is all fear-based and panic-driven. In this moment, what is happening? I'm safe. I've got my dog around. I'm in my house. I'm engaging in an amazing conversation. If we could just stay there, I think we could really just sort of wrap into, especially with our kids, to circle back to that. Check in with your heart. Check in with your gut. Was it feel good to connect in this way? And then you start to notice, well, maybe it's not something I need to do for multiple hours. Maybe just a 10-minute check-in at certain set times a day.
Sure. And again, I go back to, there's a great story about a woman brings her son to Gandhi and says, Mahatma, will you please tell my son to stop eating sugar? He's crazy, eating sugar all day, every day. Please tell him to stop. And Mahatma Gandhi says, bring your son back in 2 weeks. A little bit puzzled, the woman says, okay, I'll come back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks go by. She brings her son back. Mahatma Gandhi says, little boy, stop eating sugar. And she says, what? 2 weeks? I came back, and why didn't you say that 2 weeks ago? He said, because 2 weeks ago, I was eating sugar. And so the idea of, I got to put myself through the paces. I need to hold myself accountable first and foremost. And that's been up of late very strongly in both my work as a therapist and as a men's group leader is, am I walking my talk? Because I'm full of shit if I'm trying to tell somebody else, anybody else, to not do a thing or do a thing if I'm still doing it, without at least revealing that I'm in a process around it. So,
yes. I really, that rings so true to me, that value of not being a guru and not thinking that
having integrity, being messy.
Being messy, like the messy human, like I don't have any of the answers. I have a lot of questions, and I can, point out what I see, maybe your limiting beliefs, or maybe that drinking a 12-pack of Pepsi a day might be leading to chronically elevated blood sugars. But also it's like, there's no judgment there. when we're of equal wisdom. They're like, you're drinking a 12-pack of Pepsi, but I've got my stories and my struggles. So when we tap into like, hey, we've got equal wisdom here. Let's collaborate, not Jeff's up here and he's going to help me figure out the answers and I'm down here. Oh, thank you. Like, what am I going to do if you're not there? Carry a pocket guide and, just have somebody always constantly telling me what to do. I think if I could point out the one addiction that I see with everyone I've worked with thus far is they look to someone else to tell them what to do. Tell me what to eat. I'm going to read books on to tell me what to eat. I'm going to have my doctor / God tell me what drugs to take. I'm going to have my spouse or whatever tell me what to do. My honey-do list I hear a lot, or on and on and on it goes. When if we are what we're talking about from the beginning, if we're tapped into our essence, our sovereignty, our personal power, then I don't need anyone nor would I want anyone to tell me what to do. I can collect the information and then see how it resonates from within. And then again, we're now collaborating. So there's no shame and, oh yeah, I fell off the wagon. I was addicted to I got on my phone for the last 5 days straight. It's just like, hey, I need some help here. And it's like, yeah, I got you. I'll help you out. What can I do?
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. And that's been a consistent theme of late for me in all my work, which is empowerment. I've realized what a drain it is. The one of me who wants to be right, who wants to look like I've got my shit together, that I want to be revered, admired, that's a big drain. And it's a big drain when I'm participating in that power up, power down relationship unconsciously. So very much moving towards empowerment. So much of what I do, like for instance, if I were to ask you a question, like you've got a conflict, say, with a coworker, arbitrarily, and I say, well, what do you think you should do? And you say, I don't know. And one of my favorite questions is, well, if you did know, what would you do? And now folks will often say, well, I don't know. I'm like, okay, cool. We'll try again. If you did know, if you were in contact with someone that knew, they knew, but that was part of you, what would they do that's actually you, so it's you doing it? What would you do? And it's pretty amazing how thin the layer of reaction of, well, I don't know, because we're a little uncomfortable. When just asking the question and imagining what's possible and that we actually know something turns out to be really powerful and empowering.
And isn't that the essence? Like if we are in our power and we are empowered to make our decisions, yeah, it's great to have feedback. And sometimes it's just verbalizing it, actually saying the words, getting it out of my body. I can hear it. I can hear what it sounds like. And I know somebody there is like my sacred witness. They're not judging me. They're not thinking I fell off Mars and growing a green horn out of my head. It's just, this is who we are as humans, and we support and help one another. Then that what we're talking about, empowerment, I can separate myself out from the behavior. It isn't me. It's not who I am. It's just something that I allowed to happen.
When you say something allowed to happen, can you give me an example just to put me on the map with you? What's an example of that?
So allowed to happen is I used to be in a toxic relationship.
Okay.
And what the behaviors that he would do were so blatant that that's what I would talk about. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't chained to him. I wasn't forced to be next to him. I wasn't forced to listen to him say the negative things. I allowed myself, I acquiesced my power to be next to him. That was what needed addressing, not his behaviors, because
right. Yeah, I appreciate that. That example really helps. For me, there's a both and in there, in that I see what you're saying. And if the behaviors were destructive, and it sounds like they probably were on some level, given what I know about the word toxic, then there's a both and of, okay, you're in that position, and I appreciate that there's some accountability I'm sensing in you, which is, oh, I'm reporting on these things and I'm not doing anything different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
And then another distinction I want to make there, when working with wound, and so often we are in wound in situations like that, where we're not in a conscious self, we're not in awake, aware places. I work really closely with folks around this, and it's a really important part of my work, which is like you saying you allowed it to happen. On the one hand, I can buy that totally. And I would say it was probably small s self, right? Like,
yes,
like small I, more habitual, unconscious, automatic behaviors, part of our defensive schema that would have us be in a place that was familiar, if not healthy, right? Comfortable, if not well, right? A known commodity in terms of, and this gets back to where we started. If we're used to a particular body state, being state, be it a victim state, be it a small state, be it a disempowered state, when we're not doing our work, and even if we are doing our work, it's both and, we find those things to work our shit out.
Yes.
So at some point, it seems pretty clear something turned on for you, probably because there was pain involved, and the pain got greater than that part of you could stand. And so you had to do a different thing with that capital S adult conscious self.
That's it. And it was completely ties into this. What I noticed was it was an addiction. I was tractor beamed. I didn't even like the guy. It was like Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon going to the Death Star. It's like, just shut the power down, because, resistance is futile. Like, there is no resisting this. I'm addicted. Yep. I saw it. Small self was like, I don't know. High self was like, I don't know, but I will do whatever it takes to solve this so that we are not tractor beamed anymore. And it all related to one was this was my familiar chaos. And being with someone, I think what resonated for me too was like, I was as cruel to myself. I'm not going to be with someone that treats me worse than I treat myself.
Well, right. I see this often, is that people get into a relationship where someone's really treating them well, and it's boring. And they question the validity. They think they're disingenuous or untrustable. They're too nice. How can this be real? And then it's just not very sexy or exciting, so they leave.
Right.
Not really ready to work that out and actually receive someone's genuine care.
Interesting. I think for me, when everything kind of came together and I was finally able to like, oh, thank God, the tractor beam's off, I'm gone, never to return. It was, I had to take accountability that I was putting myself in the familiar, not judging myself and not saying I'm wrong for doing it, but just the awareness of like, okay, that is what I'm doing. It has nothing to do with him. I'm just finding a familiar. It's almost like I found someone to hurt me, so I didn't have to do the heavy lifting. I didn't have to hurt myself because that's my familiar. I'm like, I'll just find somebody else to do it. And plus I get to look like the victim.
The victim, totally.
There we go.
Yeah, I appreciate your candor there. I have a similar version of my history where I had a real difficult time with relationships around conflict in my partnerships. So instead of coming with my truth or coming with a thing that I didn't feel good about or a thing that I did that I, wasn't proud of, I would just behave really badly, but then play the nice guy and ultimately force my partner's hands to do the dirty work and the heavy lifting of breaking up with me. First it would be like, what's going on? What's wrong? I'd be like, I'm fine. Nothing's going on. I'm totally here. And then I would do some terrible things. And then I would force them to do the hard work.
Yes.
So I wouldn't be the bad guy and I got to be the victim. So it's like some part of me unconsciously seeking out that, cool. That's not allowed, so I'll just do a bad thing, and then I'll be the victim. This will be great. Leash. And what I love about that is that if I keep my demons, aka my insecurities or my faults, in a basement somewhere, I don't know where the hell they are and where they're going to show up. They might get up, they might escape and then nail me. Whereas if I have them on a leash, they're always with me. I have them close. I understand these are my faults. These are my weak areas. These are my areas of growth. These are the places I know I actually probably, I don't need to go there because I know what happens. So I keep, in terms of my personal map, it's like, yeah, that valley, not so good. That river's great. Oh, that gulch, no way. I can't go there.
Yeah.
Maybe one day I'll work my way up to being able to approach that kind of terrain of me. So that's where I land with that mostly.
I like that. And I guess that is my definition of transcendence, that I am aware that is my trigger. This will never go well for me.
Right. Yeah. Well, you spot it. And I talk about this a lot. 3-step process. Identify an unconscious automatic behavior. It's hard to do, usually painful, often humbling, even humiliating. Interrupt it. Substitute a different behavior, which is that one that never goes well for me. Hey, I think I'll drink a glass of water or go for a hike with my dog. Killer.
And, that is what this is another really good example, I think, for people and my patients too. Because I would never be called an alcoholic. I would have a glass of red wine, maybe 2, and that's it. And it would be, 2 or 3 times a week. And it was just because I really liked the health benefits. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, I curated it. I had a bone dry, empty stomach. It interrupted my life, and interrupted my sleep. I wouldn't sleep well if I had any red wine. I would itch all night. I couldn't figure that out. I was like, oh, I'm allergic to sulfa drugs. It has sulfates.
Sulfites, histamines. Yeah, right.
Bingo. And it wasn't until I started asking the question, like, what is this? What am I really getting out of this? Nothing. I'm disrupting my sleep. I get even more hungry. I'm feeling separate from my son, from life, so that was like, okay, there's my chained demon now. That's my awareness.
Now getting your demon on the leash.
Now he's on my leash. It's like, okay.
Aware of it. Yeah. And I would offer, I appreciate that example. We'll go back to small s being unconscious self, large, capital S being conscious self. When you said you're getting nothing from it, I would say, well, yeah, your maybe capital S self is getting nothing from it. But I can almost guarantee your small s self is all about it. Health benefits, in quotes, is a pretty good justification for drinking wine.
Resveratrol. Yeah, now it's healthy. And who told me? Yeah. And the gods told me it's healthy.
Sure.
My body is telling me it is not healthy. My body is having a toxic reaction. It is obvious. So when we get back to what you have said from the beginning, empowerment, personal empowerment. If I'm personally empowered, I'm not going to drink red wine for the next, 5 to 7 years, however long I did, because it's healthy. I'm going to tap into my empowered being and like, okay, that is not working for my body. Let's get that demon on a leash. I've got the awareness that will never, if I'm in small self, sure, I'm just going to listen to the news. I'm going to listen to women's magazines. Like, you tell me what to eat and you tell me what to put in my body. Conscious awareness. I have that really good feedback. My body will tell me pretty quickly.
Yeah, this has been coming up much of the time we've been talking. We're being groomed pretty, I'll go ahead and say this, I move away from extreme language most of the time, but we're constantly being groomed to be good consumers. Just consume, whether it's coffee's cool, alcohol's cool, sex is cool, technology is cool, the latest, style, fashion, technology is cool. It's all about consumption. And it strikes me as you're talking that the difference between consumption and, say, resonance, attunement, is it's Grand Canyon. That's probably too small, because with consumption, for me, it's unconscious, it's disempowered, it is really detached, dissociated. I'm just feeding the hungry ghost. I'm feeding the bottomless pit.
Yes.
As opposed to, God, it's hard to read about this latest shooting. I'm super sad. I'm going to go grieve with some friends, not just eat a bag of chips and drink 6 beers. Which again, it would be the worst thing given the magnitude of the event.
Right.
And it's the habitual elements to it, and the lack of choosing. Right. There's no choice in there. Typically, there's no choice in there. So that's what lands for me.
But that I really, really value that you say that, because what I notice with peers, and I'm in Bay Area, California, and it's even more prominent here since I moved here. Mm-hmm. But we advertise to one another. Like I was having a conversation with somebody, and he was like, well, what's the most healthy of the fast foods? Because he's like, I love Chick-fil-A. And I was like, you're just asking me to like quantify poison. Like they're all poison. You can't have a healthy poison. You just can't. So, but it was just like,
soda pop I can feel best drinking.
But we're advertising, we're telling one another like, oh, you got to go, dude, you got to go get Chick-fil-A. It's amazing. Or this coffee is crazy good. And the small self loves that, because I think we are a nation of hungry ghosts. I think we've lost our culture. If we ever had it, you can't really commit genocide on a country and have culture and throw elders in nursing homes and not have any of that. So we create this nation of people that are not enough without, like you're saying, the latest technology or the newest clothes or whatever it is. So then we're these hungry ghosts. And how do we fill the hungry ghosts? Well, you name your poison: fast food, technology,
endless supply.
Alcohol is cheap. It's around every corner. It's again, not to pan out too far, because I tend to do that and see like, the why.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter in the now. The now matters, like, how do I want to spirit my life? I want to spirit it as consciously and as aware of who I am as possible. So in that, only I can determine what is lowering my consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to say it's hard work. It's a lot of swimming upstream, especially when the cultural norms, societal norms, are screaming otherwise.
Yes.
It's the thing I work to convey with everybody I work with, which is, hey, we're all about the long game here. We're going to look at short-term gains, and it will look microscopic relative to the challenges that lay ahead, and especially when we're in the midst of trying to fundamentally shift how we are in the world, how we are in ourselves and in the world. It's hard work. It's gritty. It's humbling. It is unsexy, especially relative to what we're being told sexy is. And I think it's totally sexy on a different level.
Yes.
Just mostly it doesn't get the run as being, we talk about the sexiest man, the sexiest woman. I want to talk about the sexiest personal process of deep, painful, transformation. It is gritty. It is gnarly, and also satisfying. So
I love that you said that. And I if nothing else from this, if your takeaway is when you get down in this work, it is hard. Yeah. So don't turn away. Don't turn away and think like you're doing it wrong, because it's extremely hard. But I really believe, I believe in my essence that it wouldn't mean anything to us if it wasn't. If it was just like we could, by tomorrow, I'm going to kind of get rid of all the demons and learn to rise above them and they're gone. It's not, I don't want to play that game. That's too easy. That's, I think, when we look at all the different mythologies, that's our version of hell. Like eventually it's like, oh, this is awful. Initially, and what I think with the nation of hungry ghosts and goldfish attention spans, like that sounds perfect. I get what I want today, but then tomorrow, hungry ghost is even hungrier. What am I going to feed it with today? And when you get off that hamster wheel, you just tap into like, what does my heart want? I want to go on a hike. I want to take my shoes off. I want to feel the bare earth on my feet. I want to put my third eye to a rock. Like people think I'm crazy, but it fills my soul. And so when I'm functioning in my truth, it doesn't matter what other people think. Then that's freedom. I've lost that need for acceptance or appreciation or approval. I'm free. And I think that maybe that if I could look at what we're after, it might be that freedom, that personal freedom, that sovereignty.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The phrase I use often is lead with your longing. And that's also quite the journey because one of me wants to eat a bag of chips. That's not my longing. That's an impulse. Like learning to make those distinctions on a finer and finer level. If we decide that we want to be a concert pianist, or we want to be an ultra runner, or we want to be a really incredible oil painter. Okay, game on. Prepare to lose a whole lot of what you think is valuable right now to devote yourself singularly to this practice. Again, unsexy in the moment, super sexy in the big picture around what does it take to stick with something that you care about? What does it take to return to that thing when it's brought you to your knees? Like you said, this is hard. I don't want to do it. I want to give up. Okay. Yeah. I have voices that say that often. If we're challenging ourselves, those voices are actually what's called a reverse indicator. That's a good sign. So you got some doubt. Cool. It means you're on your growing edge, getting your ass kicked a little bit. That's a good sign, being stretched.
And that again is going back to your truth. The capital self knows what is ultimately satisfying to the soul.
Right. When we're talking here about getting honest with ourselves more and more, that's my process for sure.
Yeah.
That I'm getting it handed to me on a regular basis when I eat one more handful of roasted salted cashews than I need. I was like, oh God, right. Or when I check sports scores instead of pick up my guitar, it's like, oh, right.
Yeah.
That is lowercase s, small s self, right?
Habit.
There.
And it's easy to get in those habits. And keep in mind, there's, some extremely smart individuals all over, in these rooms, figuring out how to get us addicted to these apps and these phones. So we have to be in, hey, I'm not going to do it. Or for me, I had this amazing practice in the morning, meditation, breath work, go to the water, do my yoga, connect with Mother Earth. And then all of a sudden, I know the last 2 or 3 days I'm on my phone. And then it's like an hour and a half later. How did that happen? Okay. No shame,
all pretty susceptible,
no judgment, but get back into the practice. What's the easiest way for me to do that? Oh, easy. I'll just keep my phone way on the other side of the house and leave it there. And so I don't have that when I wake up in the morning. I have my practice. Then I can check my phone. I don't need to check it. There's no emergencies that happen overnight. My son's there. My dog's there. We can figure everything else out at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then people start to understand, like, now I'm creating the algorithms. You don't connect with me except for in these certain time periods. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. That's a great practice. That's the capacity to say no. Growing our capacity to say no, the bigger we get, is a vital skill.
I'm going to write that down because I think that it could even be the title, but growing our capacity to say no.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we get into I think there's just so many cliches with all of this awakening, you know, like, well, set your boundaries and you have, you know, whatever. I don't know. It's just background noise, but having that tapped into your personal power, having that empowerment, and then building that capacity to say, no, I'm sorry, that's not in alignment with my soul. First time you say it, and I remember this too, I'm like, oh my God, I created a black hole. The world's going to collapse. They're going to pull out a handgun and shoot me because I said no. What's going to happen? I'm scared.
That is a solid one. They're going to pull out a gun and shoot me.
They're going to shoot me in the head because I said, no, I'm not going to help you move.
Yeah.
And then, you know, as you build that muscle, it's just like, and you tap in more to what matters to you. Now you're creating a world where you have awareness of your demons, your addictions, your potential to get sucked back in. So that, they're all in my chains. I see where they are. I'm not going down those routes. Yeah. And ultimately you start tapping into more and more of your freedom. And there is no, like you said, there's no finish line. That finish line or your benchmark keeps evolving.
Right.
Because thank God I'm not going to chase after the goals I had when I was 12 or 26.
Yeah, totally. And the distinction that I'm finding useful these days is that following our North Star, which is different than trying to get to the destination.
Yeah.
North Star, I'm never going to get there. And the North Star is a guiding point that I can reference consistently. And that's working really well for me instead of, I'm going to crush this. I'm going to get my goal.
Yeah.
Kill it. Like, oh, okay. Wow. And then what? And then we're in the hungry ghost terrain. Then the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So. Yeah.
Guilty is charged of that. And I you know, and again, it's that awareness and having the language around it. But in kind of closing and summarizing, what are just maybe two or three some things somebody could do today, right now, to start going from small self to conscious, aware, big self?
Oh, that's a good question. First one I'll say is conscious deep breath whenever you think about it. Or just conscious breath. It doesn't even have to be deep. Just, this is a practice I learned many, many years ago in Vipassana when I did a 10-day retreat when I was probably 25 or something. Their recommendation, meditate an hour in the morning, an hour at night, and that's tough, no doubt. And the other recommendation was every single time you think of it, take a breath and be with your breath. Simplify, simplify, simplify.
Yes.
And then there's celebration. I am a huge proponent of celebration. To say something like, hey, nice job, Jeff. I talk to myself like that. You did it. Or that's like me, to slow down and take a single deep breath when I thought of it. So to really interrupt this larger pattern, do a small, significant thing, being present and building the muscle. It's like a calisthenic. And then say, right on, that's like me now, to do a thing that has agency in it. I thought I could do it, and then I did it. That's self-efficacy. And some of my training in wilderness work, they talk about when we come out of the wilderness, they say, whatever you do, don't do what you usually do. So I say, mix it up. Do something different. Do something spontaneous. Yes. Say the thing you wouldn't normally say. Take a risk. Compliment someone on their earrings or the color of their shirt, or just interact. We are stronger together. We're relational beings. We need contact. And that can be anything. Text someone, I love you. And maybe it's a risk. Text someone something you really appreciate about them and be very specific without wanting a return. That can be a tough one. Just give it away. So there's a few.
Love that. I really love all of those, especially giving it away without the expectation, because I think we're so used to that. I mean, I grew up on a ranch in the middle of Nevada with 3 siblings, and everything had to be exactly 25%, or there was bloodbaths. It was like, we're separating out the cow pen. We had to clean the cow pen, the milk cow. And it's like, it had to be literally 25% or we're killing each other. And I think I got so used to that too. It's like, well, what am I getting out of this? And I am such a giver that when I tap back into that, it's like, oh my God, this feels so good. And knowing there's nothing that I need from it. This is from my heart. This is from my soul. And again, that's our empowerment.
Yeah, and there's something just came up for me is I think there's a strong correlation between our capacity to give without expectation of receiving anything in return, to then also growing our capacity to ask clearly for what we want.
Yes.
Because we're so indoctrinated, like to your point, into this passive and passive aggressive indirect culture where I get what I want through manipulation. That's what I learned. So I give this thing and they say, oh my God, thank you. That's so kind of you. I can't really know. Really, oh my God, you're so great. And I'm like, yeah, I am so great. I didn't really care about it either. This thing I'm giving you, I was going to throw it away, but now I feel great.
Yeah.
That was my motivation. So being able to just give something, whether it's a compliment or a kind word or something you genuinely want someone to have, well then, again, there's a strong correlation for me of being able to say, oh, hey, I would like this from you. Not necessarily even that person, but it could be another person. Just to do things one at a time, try to be as clear as we can.
And that's a gift from the heart. Another whole show is like, there's that addiction to being seen as a good girl or a good boy. Like, look, I'm so good, especially nurses. And now they've given nurses this like hero status, like firefighters have. And, you know, like we're all heroes. If you're tapped in and you're doing your work, you are a hero in my book anyway. And like, to your point too, like that's sexy. Someone tapped into their essence and their demons and their awareness and their fallibilities. That's sexiness. You know, your car and your house and your silver tongue, you know, they can just spew out the words. That's not the essence of who we are. And I think we are messy and we are vulnerable and tapped in to our power. We get to see the world through each other's eyes. Like I'll never know how you see it, but I'm interested. And so when we connect, it's like, let's just navigate, adjust those trim tabs to our North Star. And you're going to your North Star, and it's interesting to see each other tapped in, aware. Oh, that's my son too. Okay. Right when I was going to say, okay. Well, anyway, I appreciate you, Jeff, for spending this hour with me, for engaging with me. Where can people find you?
Find me on the web, 3leavescounseling.com, my Facebook page, Jeff James Howard. Those are the two central spots.
Okay. And I will post those links in the show notes on Apple and Spotify and all those good places. And from my heart to yours, thank you so much for spending this hour with me on Medicine Girl.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me, Robin.